Talk to me about COVID. What on earth is going on? More than 40,000 cases a day. Why is there such a slow uptake of the vaccine booster, do you think?
I think that's something that we really need to address, Kay. And as you know, it's open to everybody over the age of 50 and also vulnerable people. And I would urge people who can to take the booster jab, because the vaccination rollout has been the most successful thing we've done. And it's allowed the economy to open up. And as we opened up, as we hit the fourth phase in July, it was clear that, you know, we had to live with the virus, and it was likely as we opened up that there would be more cases. Now, the critical thing, as my colleague, the Health Secretary, has said, is about hospitalisation and also deaths. And thank God those figures are much, much lower than they were certainly at the beginning of the year.
Although still going out, 223 deaths yesterday.
It's a situation that we're concerned about. But you'll remember at the beginning of the year, we had hundreds, if not thousands a day. But mercifully, that hasn't happened. And as the Health Secretary said, it's something we're going to have to live with. And I think we are managing the situation.
He went further than that,
reasonably.
didn't he? He said it was going to be a particularly tough winter. How worried are you, I should say, about the NHS being overwhelmed?
I think winter's always difficult, as you know, because there are lots of things going around, lots of viruses, and it's a particularly vulnerable time for lots of elderly people and people in our country, and also for the health service. I think with coronavirus, it does add an extra complication. But we're confident that with the vaccine rollouts, with the extra booster jab take-up, the situation can be managed well.
OK. Let me take you back to older people not wanting this vaccine booster. Now, you may remember I worked in a vaccine hub at the start of the year. And one of the concerns was a lot of older people came in, and if it was a Pfizer booster, if it was a Pfizer inoculation, they didn't want it. They didn't want Pfizer. They wanted AstraZeneca. If you've had AstraZeneca, you're now mixing it with Pfizer. How are you going to convince them that that is the right way forward? And if not, would you consider bringing back AZ for older people?
I think we just have to push the message. And certainly at the beginning of the whole vaccination process, there were groups of people that were quite reluctant to take up the vaccination. Some older people were particularly people from ethnic minorities. But we actually did a good job in encouraging people who were reluctant to take up the vaccination. And that's what I think we will be doing, certainly to drive up
so
uptake.
What are you going to do? How are you going to make that happen? Because it's not working at the moment.
Well, I think it can work. I think people need to be told.
Ad campaign? What are we talking about?
Well, we need to get the communication out there, and that's what we're doing, and that's what Plan B, I'm sure, will involve. And we need to get people more awareness, people more comfortable with the different vaccinations.
And what if they want AstraZeneca? Will you bring that
I think
back?
For now, we want to stick to the Pfizer and get the booster jab campaign up and running, and that's what we're focusing on.
And what's that
campaign
campaign look like?
Well, it's just communication, making sure that people understand that the vaccination rollout is key to protecting themselves and their families, and that's something that we can keep people like me on shows like this can keep pushing that message.
But you have said that's what Plan B would involve, so obviously it's been
and other things. I mean, you mentioned them. You mentioned the other issues.
What about these walk-in centres? Because the walk-in centres are virtually empty, is what we're being told anecdotally, because people are being told they shouldn't go to have a jab until they're called up by the NHS. That's mixed messaging.
No, let me be very clear about this.
Please.
I think that people who are eligible for a booster, particularly people over the age of 50, other vulnerable groups, should be taking up the booster jab, because that's clearly the best way. That's clearly the best way to protect themselves and also their families and people they care about. And the wider community.
Sure, of course. That's why we all have vaccinations, isn't it? 12 to 15-year-olds, 90% of them are unvaccinated. Why is that not working? 200,000 children off school last week with COVID. I
think it is working, but we just need a faster rollout. I mean, it's easy to say that things aren't working when they've just started, or we need to push them more.
It's been going on for weeks, though, hasn't it?
We need to push them more, dynamically. But it is working.
So you acknowledge that it's not been pushed dynamically enough at this stage?
Well, I'm saying that we could always do better. We can always improve, Kay. You know that. Nothing is ever going to be, perfect. But we can be more dynamic in pushing it, and that's what I would urge people to do.
Because 10% uptake's not enough, is it?
No, we need to increase that.
OK. Plan B, we've been talking about Plan B. Let me just ask you about, sorry, I forgot about lateral flows. Are they going to continue to be free?
I think so. I hope so. But let's see what happens.
Because they weren't going to be, were they? You were going to start charging for them. You weren't going to give them away if people rang the NHS or went onto the app and ordered them. It was no longer going to be free. But I was reading in the paper this morning that that's a bit of a U-turn overnight. Is that your understanding?
Well, I'm assuming that it'll continue to be free, but I don't know what the precise detail is on that.
OK. Plan B. Now hearing about Plan B plus. Do you know what that might be looking at? Suggestions that there could be restrictions on holidays again?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think the conversation about restrictions on travel, restrictions on, more lockdowns is completely unhelpful. I think we've had a huge job of work getting the vaccine rollout to the point that we could reopen the economy. That was the main thing we were focused on this year. That has worked. And what we want to do is manage the situation as it is. We don't want to go back into lockdown or into further restrictions.
Did say that this time last year, though?
Well, last year, we didn't have a vaccine. This time last year, we didn't have a vaccine. The vaccine has changed our total approach to this and has given us a measure of security, which everyone is enjoying, and that's why we've managed to open up the economy.
As long as people take up the boosters?
Yeah, no, I would say that repeatedly. I mean, people should.
Important.
That is very important, Kay, you're right.
OK. Stephen Riker, who, as you know, is a member of SAGE, is advocating Plan C and saying that we can't rule out another lockdown. No,
I would rule that out. Clearly, throughout this process, there have been people saying the lockdown was unnecessary, and there have been other people saying we should continue the lockdown. We've really plotted a path between those two extremes. I think it's worked. And that's why, Kay, one of the reasons, we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. It's 7.5% this year. That's the prediction, which is faster than any other comparable country, certainly in the G7. And there's a reason for that. And that's because we've managed to successfully roll out the vaccine and reopen the economy. And that's something that I think I'm very grateful for. OK, let's just hammer home the point before we go on to energy. People watching this morning, getting the kids ready or half-term or whatever it might be. You'll be finding yourself in that position before you know it, trust me. You need to take up your booster. The kids need to be vaccinated in order for us not to go back to where we were this time last year. I think that's absolutely a fair message. I think we should just keep rolling out the vaccination. I mean, that's what's given us the security and the safety that we enjoy at the moment. And do you think we're going to have those boosters every year? I don't know. Look, I mean, we have flu that comes back regularly. It may well be that COVID is in that category. All I'm focused on is this year and making sure that enough people get the boosters, enough people are double vaccinated, because still not everybody is double vaccinated, so that we can give protection in the here and now. What happens next year and the year after is something that we'll have to just wait and see. Exactly. OK, talk to me about the energy plan that we heard about yesterday. Our Tamara has been reading it. She missed Succession last night so that she could read the document and brief me up on it. It's certainly genuinely world-leading. But a lot of people with old drafty houses and diesel cars are going to be saying, how much is this going to cost me? I think that's a fair question. But if you actually look at what the strategy says and what it's trying to do, is that it's trying to actually attract huge amounts of private investment into the UK. And what happens with private investment is that the unit costs of the energy actually is driven down. It's lower, it's cheaper. And this is what happened with offshore wind. I mean, if you look back, even in 2012, 40% of our electricity came from burning coal. Today, that's about between 1% and 2%. And the big difference has been renewables. And if we look back over the last 9 years, the cost of those renewables has gone down hugely, something like 2/3. So more investment actually in diverse energy sources is actually going to reduce costs in the medium and long term. And I think that's a good thing. If we don't insulate our homes, these heat pumps are not going to work, are they? Well, the heat pumps, we've got boiler upgrade grants. We've got huge incentives for people to make that transition. And also we're making sure that new build houses have a higher standard of energy efficiency than older houses. There's still issues with retrofit. We've had various schemes, and we're looking at schemes now to encourage people and also to incentivise making sure that our homes are more energy efficient.
Shouldn't the government be saying, from today, any new home that is built in the UK should have a heat pump? We're not having gas boilers in new homes anymore.
So there are a range of sources of energy supply. Heat pumps are a great source, and we want to increase that. There are things called heat networks if you live in apartments, and I've seen them in London particularly, and they're going to be more widely adopted. So yes, heat pumps are absolutely central, but there are other forms of
I suppose my
decarbonising.
question is, gas boilers should not be being put into houses that are being built from today.
Yeah, I mean, we've said that the gas boiler will be phased out.
But why not do it today? Why do that? Why not just say?
Because as you say,
it's
it's very costly. I mean, what we don't want to do. I mean, it's a fine line you have to tread between making the transition and essentially forcing people, imposing costs on people to make the transition. And what we want to do is to keep people with us on the transition, on the journey.
Yeah. Just to take you back to insulating homes, so, you know, my home is old and drafty, and because of where I live, I can't do anything with the windows, etc. So it is very challenging for some people, and I'm sure I'm not the only person. There'll be lots of people watching this morning in a similar position.
It is challenging. I mean, we've gone through these transitions before, and people forget this, but, you know, when we went from town gas to natural gas, that was a huge nationwide drive over many years. And the town gas was filthy stuff, and we managed to transition to natural gas. And this is another transition. We're saying that we can actually have a cleaner, more sustainable environment. And most people want to see that. I'm always struck by the numbers of people, young people in particular, that are very enthused by this, and they really want us to get going. And as usual, some people are saying it's too expensive and we're moving too quickly. A lot of other people are saying we're not moving fast enough. And that's an important debate to have in a democracy.
Talking about how much it's going to cost to power industry, given the increase in energy prices. Obviously, you sort of seem to get at cross purposes with the Treasury over that a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that you were basically making things up.
I don't know where that came from.
It must have made you very cross. I'd have been very cross if people were telling me I was telling porkies.
You know, I speak to the Chancellor, we speak together. You would expect responsible people watching this programme would expect government departments to be talking to each other, and that's exactly what we do. I don't know where that particular remark came from.
Well, I do, because it was somebody from the Treasury who spoke to our deputy...
well, I don't know about
deputy
that.
political editor.
I don't know.
And they said he's just making it up.
I don't know anything about that. And actually,
trust me, I'm not lying to you. That's what happened.
That may be what happened, but then
How cross are you about that?
You will remember, Kay, you know, we said that we speak to each other all the time. The Prime Minister, number 10, said we speak to, as you would expect, the Secretary of State for Business to be speaking to the Chancellor and the relevant teams to be talking, and that's what we do.
Which is why I can't understand that they would say something like that. It's just divisive.
Well, maybe you should ask them.
Yeah, but because you're here, I'm asking you.
No, I just want to say that we have very good relations. I mean, I spoke to the Chancellor only yesterday, saw him at Cabinet, and he congratulated me on the birth of my child, so...
Well, I'm sure he did.
Relations are very cordial.
I'm sure it certainly is with him. So you're just rising above any nonsense that we...
Well, I don't know where these comments come from. They're not helpful.
Being much more diplomatic than they were.
They're not true either. We talk all the time.
OK, it's good to see you, and congratulations
again
on the birth of your little girl. What's her name?
Ida.
Ida, lovely name.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks a lot.